There's a word that a lot of people use when they describe China and they haven't spent a lot of time here. That word is safe. If you talk to most people, they'll say, China, that place doesn't seem safe to me. I'm not going to knock them because you don't know what you don't know. And if you're listening to prevailing information about China or the loudest voices from China, it will probably confirm that bias. The truth is so far away from that. And in this video, I'll talk a little bit about it. When I started making videos in China, one of the videos that I made, I sat on the back porch of an apartment I was living at on actually the other side of Ningbo. We're in a city called Ningbo right now. I was sitting on the other side of Ningbo. And it was a beautiful sunny day, sort of like this. I'm in the shade right now, but it's a beautiful sunny day. I wanted to express to people who watched my videos all over the world that China, at least to me, was an extremely safe country, an extremely safe place to be. Now, I recorded that video almost 10 years ago. So I kind of feel like maybe I should record another because the propaganda against the narrative that China is safe is as prevalent as ever, and in some circles is even more. The truth of the matter is that I believe that China is safer than it's ever been, especially today with all the craziness in the world at large. China seems to be a beacon of stability amongst the tumultuous seas of the world. Even back 15 years ago, I could walk through cities that in any other part of the world you would consider dangerous. You would think, I don't know if I want to walk around there at 2 o'clock in the morning. I am from Southeast Michigan, just 15 minutes from Detroit. And in those areas, there were certainly places that you did not want to be at a certain time. There's some places you didn't want to be at any time. If you were to find an area that gave you that same feeling as far as venue, maybe rural, poor, dirty, crowded with youth after the club, you might not want to walk through that place. I've certainly been to parts of the world where you shouldn't. I was in Phnom Penh at 3 o'clock in the morning, cycling through the ghetto, and I almost got stabbed, you know.
In the clear now, actually. Kind of riding out of the city. But that was the first time I've been faced with a mugger and then been hunted after the fact. Spooky.
I've walked through places that felt the same as that Phnom Penh ghetto here in China, and you didn't have to feel unsafe. So let's start out with the obvious. You can't have private gun ownership in China. If you are in America and say you're in some sort of a driving altercation, a road rage incident, let's say you're in a scuffle or even a bar fight, there is always a fear that you are going to be shot. There are a lot of people with guns in America, and there's a lot of people that maybe don't know how to use them, or maybe want to use them too much. You just don't have that feeling here. I'm not saying that nobody has guns here. They can probably be found illegally through the mafia or some, black market. But people don't have them here to rely on for safety or defense or in the pursuit of crime. So you just don't have that underlying nervousness that comes along with being in a country that has firearms in the pockets of hundreds of millions of people. And they're not in the pockets, that'd be a small gun, right? Wrapped around the waist or whatever. Certainly you won't have them draped over the shoulder. You will have, obviously, military, a police presence with potential for having, even the police don't necessarily all have guns. They have tasers and stuff. But you'll have some people guarding the armored trucks, going in and out of banks, and they'll have a shotgun and things like this. I've even walked up to police here with guns, and I have zero worry. I've never been in a circumstance in China that I felt unsafe and felt like there was a weapon going to be used on me. There was only one time I ever got into even a scuffle, and it was a bar where a guy was drunk and he kicked the door of the bar so hard that it came off the hinges. A beautiful bar, kicked this beautiful door, and I went out there and I started cussing him out, and he yelled back at me, and his girlfriend ended up, the guy couldn't barely stand. Do you have the need to protect yourself in China? just like anywhere else in the world, there are security measures that you need to take in order to feel like you have some control over the safety of your belongings. I lived down the street here in Ningbo when I first moved here 20 years ago in 2005, 2009, and I had a little apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't as clean as this area. It was a little bit of the older part of China. I closed my door on my way out to run some errands, and I didn't let the door latch. I came home, my laptop was gone. Somebody had broken in. I think my door probably didn't latch properly. Somebody tested it, went in and stole my laptop. I was frustrated. I was pissed. I've also had some things that were attached to a bicycle, like a bicycle bag that was taken. Again, here in Ningbo, theft happens. Theft happens all over the world. But recently, I was watching some anti-China YouTubers. You know who I'm talking about.
Theft is a big issue in China.
Wildly bad for thieves.
Yes. I mean, come on. What are you saying decrepit? This is wonderful architecture. This is the peak of,
It's actually
Chinese
the best.
architecture. Top of the pops.
Yeah, we're talking about the bars on the windows, guys.
Yes.
But 90% of buildings in China.
Yeah, if you go around China, you'll see bars on windows. And the reason is, of course, theft.
I
Bars,
forget how
right?
ugly most of China is, but it's a fun place.
Yeah,
So he thinks that you can tell how much crime is in China by looking at the bars on the windows of apartment complexes and all over these urban areas of China, and even in the towns, because towns are built up like cities. Even if you get to low population areas, the low population is still clustered pretty tightly together, and you have high-rise apartments. High-rise apartments you have in China in a number that a lot of people across the world can't imagine, because we in America and the West, we live in houses, single family houses, ranches and things like this. But in China, people live vertically. It's just the way that the country has clustered their populations. Maybe it's some sort of a socialistic, communal kind of gathering ideology that brings people together so that they can kind of cluster. In America, they're spread out. So you have these areas with these high-rise apartments, and there's bars on the window. You will go to all places of similar builds, whether it's New York, Bangladesh, Paris, South America, Europe, and you will find buildings of the similar style with bars on windows. It's not indicative of the amount of crime or the level of crime in China in particular. If you're living in a place that's multi-story and it doesn't have a perimeter around it like most apartment complexes actually here in China do, they have a perimeter around where you've got to go through a gate in order to check into your apartment complexes. Behind me are literal thousands of apartment buildings without bars on windows. And you will find probably most new construction in China don't have bars on windows because they have a gate around, and you go in and there's a security guy at the front of the gate and he lets you into the community and you get in and you have access to your apartment, and all of those apartments don't have grates. But if you have an apartment complex that is self-standing in all parts of the world, you're going to have bars on the window. And I think it's disingenuous to say that China isn't safe because, look, there's bars on windows. If that's the case, there's nowhere that's safe. There are locks on doors in cars. People lock their car when they park outside in China. But I'm sure that if you were to look up people smash and grabbing from your car, America would probably be higher on that statistic than China. Basically what I'm saying is it's not some China dystopian thing. It's urban safety 101. I think I'm getting bit by some ants or something. They're biting the crap out of me. There was another point where he was talking about how some people that were making videos in China, which is very funny because he criticizes people who are actually on the ground in China talking about the things that they're experiencing. And he's saying from America, because he can't go to China anymore and he doesn't go to China anymore, these people don't understand China, which is the peak of hypocrisy, in my opinion. I mean, you can have an opinion about China, but you can't necessarily criticize somebody's observation on the ground in China. Anyways, this lady had found and seen a bag or an e-bike that had some items that were left on it. And she was like, wow, I can't believe somebody left this on their e-bike. It must be safe in China because you wouldn't be able to just leave that out in the open in where I'm from.
Kind of dark street. There is now one here. And look, a motorbike with a bag right there. But it's not the only one. Look at this.
How can someone leave his stuff just like that?
And he ridiculed that and said, you know, there's no way that you can leave a bag on a bike, you know, unless it's full of crap. And he started degrading what was in the bag, which is more indicative of him and his opinions than his argument at all, because he'll insult whatever is possible. He'll insult this leaf. Yeah, this leaf that Matt was talking about. It's just the most god-awful leaf you've ever seen. It's those China leaves. They're just, you know, they just are gross.
Someone left a bag with a dirty jacket in it, and she thinks it's... Anyway, that's not the end of it. Hang on. Take a look at the things. Oh, a luggage? By the way, that's how people dump things in China. It's good stuff in a bag, and it's like gross, rotten stuff over there.
I forget how
Grapes.
ugly most of China is.
I have, actually on a recent trip to Hangzhou, been walking down the street, and I passed by an e-bike, and it had a backpack in the front bag.
Huh. And that's a rental bike. Maybe it's his. Maybe it's his.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. Like you can like leave your bag in your bike.
Yeah.
Like if that was America, even if it was that guy sitting up there, I don't know, man. I wouldn't leave my personal belongings just rotten.
Where I live, like in a university town, you go to a Starbucks and there would be like kids going for lunch and they would leave all their stuff, laptop and everything, laptop like lid closed but still on the table, just leave it there.
Yep.
You know, no need to worry about anything.
And I remember looking around and thinking, oh my God, maybe I should like try and find whose this is because maybe it's forgotten. And I looked over and there was a guy that was getting coffee at the coffee shop and he was doing his thing, working on his computer. He glanced up and oh, that's mine. And he had left his bag out in the street in a very busy urban area of a very, very populated city in China. So I have seen it too. Now, there are certain locations where you might not want to do it. You might not want to put your bag out everywhere, and it's not recommended to leave your bags out when they're not protected anyways. But to say that my eyes were lying to me, don't believe your lying eyes when you watch the video of me seeing that bag. That's just stupid. There were actually a lot of comments on that video that said you shouldn't leave that, and Chinese people that said you shouldn't leave that bag in the street, you know, anywhere, you know, and that makes sense. But the fact that we can see those sorts of things and we can have those sorts of observations and interactions, that is indicative of our opinion based on the places we're from. We couldn't see something like that in the States. No one would feel even safe enough to put it out in front in their e-bike, even if they had an eye on it. They just wouldn't do it. In many cases, you leave your phone down, you walk away, your phone's gone, which happened to me in Vietnam, which has happened to me in a few occasions. Hasn't happened in China, but I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. I'm just saying it happens here less, and that you have an air of comfort knowing that this place is pretty safe. I have a comment section on my YouTube, and more often than not, I'll say something positive in my videos and somebody will comment in the comment section and saying, you know, the pistol of the gun is just off screen, you know, basically saying that the government's pointing a pistol at me saying, you better say something good or else we're going to shoot you. You know, oh, I can tell he's nervous to say those things, which in honesty, I'm just speaking the truth from my experiences, you know, there's no big secret here. Basically, we're just telling stories about interactions we're having in our lives in this place at this time. Another reason why it's really safe in China is somewhat contentious. It's the fact that there's cameras everywhere. In fact, if I'm standing here on that pole, there's 2 cameras there, and there's 1, 2, 3, and then there's 4, 5. I'm probably being looked at by a dozen or so cameras as I sit here. Knowing that makes me feel safe. And I know that's weird, especially from an American perspective or a Western perspective. You're being surveilled. Well, everybody is being surveilled. even the people who might want to commit a crime. So there is a incentive for people to follow the law. Does this come with trade-offs? Of course it does. You know, there's a thin line between security and privacy. But if you ask most citizens, and especially most expats, if they feel safer, you know, knowing that there's all these cameras out there looking around, I think the prevailing wisdom, and the wisdom that I've gained through talking to most expats that I've ran into, is a resounding yes. They feel safer. If you talk to most expats that have spent time in China, by and large, most of the people that you'll run into will say that China is probably one of the safest countries that they've ever traveled to. I'm not saying there aren't outliers, and I'm not saying that crime does not affect some of us, but it is safer than most of the countries I've ever been to, and I've been to dozens of countries all over the world. In a world where freedom and safety sometimes come into conflict with each other, China presents a bit of a paradox. It might not be a place that you would associate with liberty, but it's a place where millions of people, including foreigners, feel safe. And that deserves a more nuanced conversation. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you're interested in hearing more nuanced conversations about topics regarding East and West and life in China, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below on any topics you might want me to speak about. If you've had interactions that you feel are extra safe in Asia as opposed to extra dangerous, please share them in the comment section below. And if you have an opposite opinion to me, please leave that in the comment section below as well. I appreciate reading them, and it helps actually to add to the nuance. The comment section is as nuanced as this channel tries to be. So thanks again. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
You know, the
I always
bars
forget
at the
how
gates.
ugly most of China is, but it's a fun
Yeah.
place. Fun
Yeah,
place.
here